All right, hello and welcome to episode 9 of Stop the Clock. I am your host, as always, Sam Fermanak. Alongside me is Jude O'Conius. And today, for the first time ever, we have a special guest, our good friend and 49ers fan, Stathi Marcopulos. So, welcome to Stop the Clock, Stathi. It was a tough weekend for your Niners. Of course, they were not able to get it done in the NFC Championship Game. So, what are you feeling? How are you feeling right now?
Definitely sad. That was, besides the Super Bowl, my most crushing loss. But
Yeah, I mean, and when you say crushing, it definitely was because they did blow a 17-7 fourth quarter lead, which is the largest in conference championship history.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I felt like we were lucky to even be in that game. So just to be winning was good. But as soon as they went down and scored that touchdown, I knew we were going to lose that game.
Yeah.
I mean, if he makes that pick, obviously it would have been a different story. But they had all momentum the entire fourth quarter.
Yeah, so I want to ask, because this is now the 5th NFC Championship game you guys have been to in the last 11 seasons, and it has resulted in 0 Super Bowls. You made the Super Bowl twice out of those 5 appearances. So what do you think the key is for the Niners to sort of get over this hump, I guess? Because they have a good team overall. It's just there's been a position that's been lacking.
I think that's obvious. Our quarterback is not very good. He's average. I mean, he's like the perfect, yeah, at best. Just so average in every way. You know you're gonna get from every day. Every time he leaves the pocket, probably a pick. Overthrows almost every time. So he'll make plays sometimes, but he's just so inconsistent. You can't win with a quarterback that's inconsistent. I mean, look at the AFC. Every quarterback that was winning, I mean, those are elite quarterbacks they got over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So also, Stathi, I mean, like you mentioned, you've had lackluster quarterback play at best, if you want to call it that. And obviously, we'll get into the game real quick. But you look at the quarterback position, you still have Garoppolo for one more year, right? He can still come back with one more year on his contract left. You just shipped off 3 future first-round picks for a guy who probably played a total of, I think, 10 collegiate games in Trey
19.
Lance. 18?
19.
19, sorry. I'm sorry. 19 collegiate games that he played, and he didn't even play his year before the NFL draft. So you look at this team, obviously you have pieces like Deebo Samuel. You have guys like George Kittle offensively who are difference makers. And we saw in this game, and we'll get into how Deebo's lackluster production in the end was probably a big reason why the 49ers lost. And I don't want to say lackluster production, but he just didn't get the ball as much as he probably should. So what are you looking for? I mean, there's anything good to look forward at the quarterback position? Obviously, we talked about before, and you said you'd maybe like a Brady to 49ers.
Yeah, it's what I want the most is Tom Brady. Obviously there's reports that he's going to retire and whatnot, but I don't think he's going to retire. I don't think he wants to retire. I think he'd retire before he stayed with the Buccaneers because there's nothing.
You think he's leaving? You think he's not going to come back to Tampa Bay?
No way. He'd retire before he does that. No way.
Wow.
But
I mean, he's got one more year on that contract.
They have to bring back too many pieces for him. No, there's just no way. I don't see it happening. But like a team like the Niners, we're ready. I mean, we're a quarterback away.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, or as Jude mentioned, y'all spent 3 first-round picks to go get your guy at number 3, and that is Trey Lance. And we only saw a small sample size of Trey Lance. For some people, that's enough. But he started 2 games this year, and he came in for most of another one versus the Seahawks. And in those games, he compiled 603 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 picks, completing 57% of his passes. So he wasn't terrible. He wasn't great. He was kind of right where we would expect a rookie quarterback to be. So I definitely think there are things you like here. I don't know if you're the 49ers looking at this saying – because I don't know if Tom Brady's going to be the guy. Maybe if they swing something for Aaron Rodgers, I don't know. I just think they've invested too much in Trey Lance. So whether they stick with Garoppolo for another year, they trade him away because I still think they could actually get some good value out of Jimmy G, or they just hand it off to Trey Lance immediately, or they get another bridge guy for cheap water, say like a Teddy Bridgewater. I know you probably won't love to hear that, but it's definitely a possibility for the Niners.
No, the last thing I want is for us to keep Jimmy Garoppolo. As a fan, nobody wants to watch him play again. Like, we all know what we're getting. It's not going to change. Like, we don't want to see that. When it comes to Trey Lance, yes, he's a rookie. He's going to make rookie mistakes. But to me, he just looked like he hasn't played enough football. Like, I mean, he played in, I think, the FCS, which is, I mean, that's not even, he's not playing against top-tier college teams. And he looked out. He was like, he couldn't even go through his progression out there. And you're like, as soon as you get any type of pressure, you tuck and run. And you're like, you step up in the pocket, make a play, go through your progression, find somebody. And, he just looked like a panic QB out there, which that's okay. He's a rookie, but I just don't see how he's the guy that you spend 3 first-rounders on. I don't know how you could possibly, this guy is going to be worth 3 first-rounders when he's only played, like Jude said, I think 18 games and against South Dakota State. I mean, come on. But no, I would much rather we go after Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers because they only got a couple more years left in them, and we're ready for a Super Bowl.
I think Aaron Rodgers has his sights already set on location, but
Denver and the Niners, honestly, those are 2 good teams for either of those quarterbacks to go to because I think they're both ready for a Super Bowl. So
I agree.
And talking about the teams, because obviously we'll probably get to the game now, where the Rams did obviously finish on top 2017 and head into their second Super Bowl in the McVay era, obviously the first one with golf. I think you can look at this game and starters and look at the score and say, okay, this was a pretty close game between the Rams and the 49ers, but you really look more into the game and you say, man, the Rams could have beat this team by 20. I mean, this Rams team really could have beat the team by 20. And I think you look in the first half where there were 2 huge drops, right? Cooper Kupp had a big drop, which was almost like a routine catch for him that he's been doing all season.
Yeah,
and then you have
a lot.
I don't know number 18's name, but number 18 on the Rams, he also had a huge I think he's a rookie, but he had a big drop in the end zone. And those are kind of 2 plays that you can look at that kept the 49ers in this game. Obviously, the 49ers defense played pretty great. The run game was showing up for the most part when they needed them to.
Run game for the Niners?
I mean, it wasn't showing up, but just the front was moving them in the way that, that they were getting those big plays. Not big plays, but, yardage, I should say. But like we've talked about, I think Jimmy Garoppolo lost this game for the Niners. He just couldn't make plays. I mean, he was 16 for 30. 2 touchdowns and interception, and he just didn't look good.
Yeah, it was Ben Skoranek who dropped the
Ben
touchdown.
Skoranek,
Yeah, and there's also a couple of key drops by Jalen Ramsey as well that could have been interceptions there.
Trevon Diggs would have made that anyway.
Okay, but Trevon Diggs probably would have given up a ton.
I'm just saying that's why you get a corner like Trevon Diggs, because then he makes those interceptions. If you look at the Jaquise Tart interception, that's why you get a guy like Diggs. Because
don't get me started on that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Respectfully, Daniel Sorensen makes that, but don't even get me started on Trevon. Bro, anyone.
Jalen Ramsey dropped a pretty easy interception in the game, and I was looking at man, Diggs would have made that interception.
Mm-hmm.
But Diggs is sadly sitting on his couch, so
Yeah. Because, all right, yeah. So I mean, look, I agree. I think definitely the Rams could have. They started off slow, and Stafford threw his first pick in the postseason so far. But other than that, I think Stafford has looked pretty flawless in these playoffs. That's the reason you went out and got him. I remember sitting on my couch where I was watching, they were down 10, and I tweeted, I was like, hey, this is why you went out and got Stafford. This is why you gave up all that capital to get guys like this. And it showed. It showed at the end of the Buccaneers game with that long throw to Cooper Kupp to set up the winner. And then it showed in this one. He was able to overcome that 10-point deficit. And now the Rams are reaping the rewards of it, and they're going to their, as you mentioned, second Super Bowl in the McVay era. But I think all of us are happy for him as well as Odell Beckham, who also came up big in that game as well.
Yeah, Odell Beckham was awesome. It seemed like every play, it was either him or Cooper Kupp. They were doing something. It was just nobody on our team could guard either of those guys. I mean, we tried everything, zone, man. It just didn't seem like any of it worked. Those guys really they came to play. Obviously, Stafford made great throws. Look at Jimmy G. Can only do so much without a good quarterback. So
those
no,
two
those
guys,
guys play.
they combined for 22 receptions, 100 or 255 yards, and then the 2 touchdowns by Cup. So that was a big day for them. I think another area where I think San Francisco needs to upgrade is their secondary. I mean, one of the key pieces of their Super Bowl run in 2019 was Richard Sherman. You could say what you will about him being washed. He was still a very smart corner and played in that system very well. And you're looking a bit young out there. I definitely think that's an area that can be addressed in the draft for the Niners for sure.
Yeah, well, it seemed like this whole game they were picking on number 20 on the San Francisco 49ers, the rookie Ambry Thomas. I mean, it seemed like every deep play was on him specifically. And going to OBJ, I don't think how can you be like sad? I mean, how can you not be anything but happy for OBJ? I mean, he obviously went in that poverty franchise to start with the Giants, and then he went to the Cleveland where we thought maybe it was like a super team with him and Jarvis, and then obviously the downfall of him in Cleveland, and then he comes to LA. And he makes his first Super Bowl appearance. And, I mean, he has a hell of an NFC Championship game, like you mentioned. He had over 100 yards, and they both combined for 255. So it was great to see OBJ definitely ball out. And, respect. I mean, he is still one of the most talented receivers, and I think people kind of forgot that as, he didn't play so well in Cleveland. But now that he's here in LA, he's really shining.
Indeed. I mean – speaking of another guy they brought in, Von Miller was brought in just to boost that pass rush. Something that I found actually really interesting is, believe it or not, the Rams did not allow a sack, or the Rams did not have a sack in that game, but it felt like they were getting pressure almost every. I mean, Aaron Donald was in the backfield, Von Miller. I mean, that one play that basically sealed it with the interception, it was like Aaron Donald and Von Miller were like passing him back and forth, and then he eventually gave it away. But that's those two along with Leonard Floyd. I think that's the key to in 2 weeks then playing the Bengals is those 3 guys right there.
Yeah. And just to finish it off, I think we can't not talk about the 49ers and not talk about Debo. I mean, Debo, everything he's done this season, obviously he's been a complete beast. He killed my Cowboys, and he's killed basically every team that's been his way. I mean, everything that this guy does is just amazing. I mean, the touchdown that he had in the game where I think I saw a stat where it's like every time he catches the ball, he averages 10 yards, right? Like he averages like basically 10 or 11 yards. It's like you throw him the ball on a screen pass, he's getting the first down. And then this one, he took it 50 yards. Yeah. But he's unbelievable. But then you look at it and says, okay, the last time Debo touched the ball in this game was with 12 minutes left. How can you allow that? A dude that is such a playmaker. And yeah, you could say Garoppolo, but you got to look at Shanahan and say, man, you've been in this situation too many times not to know to give your playmakers the ball. And to touch the ball, the last time touching the ball, 12 minutes and 42 seconds left in the fourth quarter, and they still had 2 possessions after that, that to me is like, here we go again with Shanahan.
And I'll let you get to something, but I just don't think there's really an excuse for that because you look at Kyle Shanahan, I don't think there's anybody besides maybe Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy that's better at getting their playmakers the ball. Like he finds every possible way to get Deebo Samuel the ball, and for whatever reason, he just didn't do it at the end of the game, which ultimately probably could have lost or did lose them the game. Oh, and Jude's gone. Okay, so talk to us about Deebo and how he's been this season then.
I mean, obviously, anybody who's watched the Niners, Deebo's the guy. I mean, he carries the team pretty much every game. I mean, he is our offense. You look at obviously we can run the ball. I mean, Elijah Mitchell, as good as his stats have been, he's a little overrated in my opinion, just because of the system he's been put in. I'd expect more from him, especially in that NFC Championship game. I really didn't think he made a lot of huge plays, except for
he had 11 carries for 20 yards.
Yeah, that was terrible.
He had like the one big reception, but that was kind of it.
Yeah, that was it. They shut him down, which I think that was part of the game plan was not let us run the ball. Obviously Deebo did Deebo, but they took us out of our game, and the only guy that really seemed to do anything was Deebo. But I thought for our team, what was going to be there was Brandon Ayuk, and the first half that was our guy. I mean, he made the plays, and we just didn't go to him in the second half because I don't know why, but he seemed to be the guy that was getting one-on-ones and who we should have been throwing the ball to. and getting even jet sweeps or even screens because, he's still really good with yards after the catch, him, Debo, and George Kittle. So I thought we should have done a better job of getting him the ball.
So I've before we go to the Cincinnati game, I do have a question for you, Stathi, because it seems like this has almost been a reoccurring theme. In pivotal games like this, Shanahan always seems to come up just short and not make the right plays. Is there a time now where we look at it and say, yeah, Shanahan might be this genius, but is it time to move on? Now, obviously, they're still good, but it feels like, he does enough, but then we get to these pivotal games like this year, and then you can even look back at the Super Bowl. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo obviously should have made some throws, but there's kind of this repeating pattern of where he can't always finish it off. What are your thoughts on that?
Kyle Shanahan's a great coach. Offensively, he's a genius. But yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, I don't know if he tries to get too cute and be too smart or whatever his problem is, but yeah, it seems like in big moments he doesn't show up with his play calling, and that's a problem. But to say go get a different coach, I can't support that because we've been to a Super Bowl and an NFC Championship game in the last 3 years. He took a franchise that was not very good and has built us into a contender pretty much every year. So I don't want to get rid of him to.
I just want the Cowboys to have Shanahan, so that's the only reason I was asking.
Yeah, just to put a little button on that, I 100% agree with Stathi. And also, you want to know why Jimmy G has such a good win record? It's because of Kyle Shanahan. The position that he puts his players in, you got a guy like Elijah. Pretty much any running back is going to flourish. Hell, even receivers are flourishing in the running system of Kyle Shanahan. Yes, he has had some questionable late game calls. I mean, he blew the biggest fourth quarter lead in the NFC Championship game and in the Super Bowl. In the Super Bowl twice because he was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons. But with the exception of some late game calls, Shanahan is not the problem in San Francisco. I think you got to get the Niners a quarterback. I think they have one that they need to definitely take a look into. But speaking of second half meltdowns, let's move on to the AFC Championship game where we had our biggest, I think, tied for the largest lead blown in an AFC Championship game of all time.
I think, Sam, you should start because, obviously you're not a big fan of KC, and I think you should start with this one.
Oh my goodness! I picked Kansas City, even though that's not.
Oh yeah, just updated on picks. I went 2-0, not the flex.
Okay, that's
but, I just want to say I picked Cincinnati, picked the Rams. I just wanted side note, just so people know that Sam doubted the Bengals.
We have a man who goes by many names: Joe Franchise, Joe Shiesty, Joe Brrr, Joe Cool, Joe Clutch, Dime 9, the Tiger King,
Joe Daddy.
Yes, he has arrived and he is here. He went to Yes, they won at home versus Raiders. Everyone expected to do them. He went to the number 1 seed Tennessee Titans, knocked them off. Get out of here. Then he went into Arrowhead, down 11 at halftime. Light. It was light. They came storming back in the second half, and most of the credits to him, obviously. I think what was really key in this game was I think this was the best, halftime adjustment I think I've seen in a football game in a long time. You go in the first half, obviously they're down 11 points. Tyreek Hill's having a monster game. You have Kelsey doing his thing as well. And they really can't get Jamar Chase the ball. He's been double teamed almost every play. And then they come out in the second half and Tyreek Hill gets shut out. Kelsey doesn't do much. And then they find ways to get Jamar Chase the football. He had a big second half. That was the reason they won that game.
I mean, you said it perfectly. I think the halftime adjustments. I remember when this game was 21-3, and I was like, "Yep, we're here for another brutal beatdown from the Chiefs." But I think the game deciding play was by none other than Eli Apple, and I think maybe he turned around his image just a little, but
I think he immediately destroyed it when he got back on Twitter after the game. But
he got to stop tweeting. It got old. It got old real quick. That's a whole different story. But the point is, Eli Apple made a hell of a play. Obviously, the Chiefs score that touchdown right there. it changes the game a lot, right? It would have really opened up the gates for Kansas City in the second half. And I think not getting that was a huge momentum boost, especially, and that's where the halftime adjustments came from. The Bengals saw, okay, we got this stop right here, only down 11. Yes, the Chiefs let the ball. All we got to do is start making stops, and we can score touchdowns. This Bengals offense, and I've said it this whole year, they're good enough to score when they want. It's just the defense has to make those stops when needed. And we saw it, and we talked about it in the other podcast, saying where like guys like T. Higgins had to step up, and he did. He didn't have a touchdown, but he stepped up with 100 yards. Obviously, Jamar Chase got involved a little bit later in the game, but for the most part, T. Higgins, my guy, stepped up.
As well as the Bengals played, and don't get me wrong, they played great. Joe Burrow was fantastic. The Chiefs lost this game. The Chiefs were by far the better team. It wasn't even close. You could tell in the first half they were doing whatever they wanted. I mean, the Bengals really had no response. I mean, they looked horrible compared to the Chiefs. It was just they did not belong on that field in that first half. And, the Chiefs did what they've done all year, which is be very inconsistent and let up. I mean, they did it in week 18 or 17 against the Bengals. And, they haven't they've been good, but they haven't been great. They haven't been consistent. They played some sloppy football. That's what they did in the second half. They let up, they put their foot off the gas, and, you can't do that when you're playing against Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Like, they're going to make you pay for that, but if, Patrick Mahomes has that killer instinct, they go and score on their first drive or second drive in that second half, and they're going to the Super Bowl, so I put some of that loss on Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he in the first half, he had 3 touchdowns, no picks. And then in the second half in overtime, he had no touchdowns and 2 interceptions, one of those coming on that first drive of overtime. And that was really scary for us when we saw it went to overtime, and we were all just like, okay, it's the coin flip. It's the most important.
I don't know why he didn't call tails. That's all I'm saying. Now, who picks heads? And I mean, tails never fails.
Josh Allen picked tails.
Tails never
failed. So I don't know. Maybe
you can't look at the analytics. Tails never fails. I don't know why you would go heads in that situation. You have to go tails. It was unbelievable. Honestly, Brandon Allen should be cut for that. He should not even be playing in the Super Bowl. He shouldn't even have a job after this. But to go to Stathi's point, I think we're almost kind of babying Patrick Mahomes a little. And obviously some people are, criticizing him, but I think he should get criticized more. I mean, this dude in the second half really didn't show up. And like you mentioned, they were red hot in the first half. They looked unstoppable. They looked like, man, these are the Chiefs that we're used to seeing. And then I don't know what happened. I found an interesting stat. When the Bengals dropped 8 defenders back in coverage, which was a season high on 35% pass plays, Patrick Mahomes was 7 for 13, 59 yards, an interception, and 2 sacks. So, I mean, you could say it goes both ways, right? The defensive coordinator for the Bengals, Lou Anarumo, whatever his name is, coached a hell of a job. But also look at Mahomes and say, dude, I mean, you have Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. What are you doing? And you have Eric Bieniemy as your offensive coordinator. Like, you should have won this game up 21-3. I mean, that falls on you, and there's no one else that can change that besides him.
Yeah, I mean, a stat that I like to see in this one too is guess which team allowed more sacks? The Kansas City Chiefs allowed more sacks. 2 guys that came up huge for them in that second half. The Cincinnati native, Ohio kid, Sam Hubbard with 2 sacks, and then Trey Hendrickson doing what he did all season. He had a sack and a half in that game as well. And that sack that Trey Hendrickson had came when the Chiefs went on this long 5-minute death march. You're like, okay, look at them. They're rallying. They're going to score with like 40 seconds left, a touchdown. No. They got the sack there. They were able to held them to 3, and the rest is history. So those defensive players definitely came up big for the Bengals.
I'm going to criticize Andy Reid a little bit here. They ran the ball 24 times for 139 yards.
They did stats for this?
Okay.
That's almost 6 yards a carry. If you're running the ball for 6 yards a carry, you got to give your running backs the ball. I mean, in that second half, you got the lead and you running the ball, and they clearly can't stop you. Keep running the ball. Use the clock. And, they just relied on Patrick Mahomes a little too much and threw the ball. I mean, they couldn't stop the run because they were dropping 8 guys back in coverage, and that's what was working a lot. And they used it in the first half. And they didn't use it enough, I thought.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that they went to Jared McKinnon. He was more of their featured back, and absolutely, it was working. They were getting large gains, and it's weird because you'd think, okay, we're up, what is it, 21-10 at halftime. Let's work Jared McKinnon, get maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire a little more involved, and it just didn't happen right to start these point. And obviously we know what happened next, but like I feel like Andy Reid and Jude and I have joked about this tons of times. He gets too cute, especially when you get down to the goal line and
Too
whatnot.
cute.
It's
Way
so
too
funny. They'll get to the 1 yard line. We'll be like, okay, what exotic way can they score? And now
what way can they score besides doing a 1 yard touchdown?
just running the ball in.
What else can they do?
And yes, they got to the 1 yard line, and I get passing there because you had no timeouts or whatever. Great play by Eli Apple, but I don't know. I think they get a little too cute there. Granted, Andy Reid's one of the best coaches of all time, so like definitely this isn't going to hurt him at all. But I agree. I think criticism has to go all around. I don't put too much. I thought the defense for the Chiefs actually played pretty well. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed came up with the clutch interception. That was a scary moment because you thought, oh crap, the Chiefs were about to steal momentum back, and they did. But Patrick Mahomes just couldn't get it done in this point.
Yeah, and just finishing with the too cute thing, I think that final drive, going into the last drive that the Chiefs had, Patrick Mahomes in 2 plays lost a total of negative 22 yards. I mean, if you looked at this dude, he just, and I get it, he likes to be fancy and act like he's playing Madden and literally run around the whole field and just tire the defense. But we saw in those 2 plays, and obviously you talked about the Ohio native, Sam Hubbard, making those 2 big plays when he decided to run around the whole field and then get sacked. And they could have scored a touchdown. I mean, they were at the Cincinnati 4 before those 2 negative 22 yards in 2 plays. So that's where the too cute thing, and it just costs you. It costs you. And I think we'd be talking about a different storyline if that didn't happen, because I think the Chiefs easily would have, done it. But last thing, I think the overtime – it's funny because, we talked about this whole week leading up to this Cincinnati game and Chiefs game about the overtime rules. And we're like, oh, they got to be changed. They got to be this. And then we get to this game, and we all, of course, are like, shoot, Chiefs get the ball. But look, Bengals defense, they stepped up, and they almost made a case for why even change the rules at all. I mean, why change it at all? Your defense just got to get a stop. Like, that's all you got to do. There's no, let each team get the ball. And so – I don't know. It's crazy because, for one case, you could be like, yeah, Josh Allen didn't get the ball, and that sucks, and we wanted to see him get the ball. But at the same time, we could see what Cincinnati did, where it's like, oh, all your defense got to do is get a stop. And this is a stop against a Kansas City offense that, yeah, they didn't play great in the second half, but we know what they're capable of.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I love the overtime rules personally. I'm a fan of them because – if you don't score a touchdown or a field goal, you're going to lose the game. I mean, most likely, you're going to lose the game. I mean, all they need is a field goal. I mean, yeah, the Chiefs, as great as they are on offense, the Bills were horrible. That's what cost them the game, because their defense was a joke. I mean, they couldn't stop anybody. I mean, a high school team could have made some of those plays. I mean, that was ridiculous, some of the wide open throws Mahomes got. But anyways, the Bengals defense – they did what they had to. They got to stop. And even if they didn't get that pick, the Chiefs were going to have been punting. And Bengals would have only needed maybe 30, 40 yards before they would have been in field goal range. And, McPherson, McPherson, he's not going to miss, once you get to the, 38, 40-yard line, he's not going to miss. So.
Yeah, I had the exact thought that you just mentioned when – the Bengals got that stop. I'm like, well, there goes any chance of them changing the rules because the Bengals showed what could happen. But at the same time, no one's complaining about how that overtime went. Do you know why? Because both quarterbacks got a chance to do what they could with the ball, and one of them converted. And great, yes, defense wins championships. The Bills' defense, it was inexcusable. And then we saw what happened a couple years back, 2018, with the Chiefs when they kind of got shafted by the overtime rules. I still think the NFL needs to make it so both teams get a chance, but for now it looks like we'll have to live with the current overtime rules.
But I feel like after seeing this game, your defense, I mean that falls on your defense to make a stop. And I think to go into what Stathi said, it's like yeah, you obviously want to see both offenses get the ball in overtime, and then there's no question about it. But you got to be relying on your defense too. You can't, there comes a time in a game where you got to, and that's why overtime's so fun, because it's like your defense got to get a stop. I mean, it's as simple as that. If you change the rules, then it's like, okay, defense, do whatever you want, and our offense can go handle business.
I disagree. Do you know what's actually more fun than defense getting stops?
What?
Points. Like if you have both offenses get a chance, they both score a touchdown. That's more points. That's more marketability. That's more exciting plays for the NFL that they can broadcast. So, like, from an exciting standpoint, I think you won it. From a fairness and not having the season decided on a freaking coin flip, I think that's important. Like,
I think after seeing this game, we can say that it's not decided on a coin flip. It's your defense has to just play defense. I mean, that's all it got to do. And Cincinnati proved that. Cincinnati doesn't have a great defense, but they played well enough, and they made the stops that they needed to. And look at that. It resulted in a win.
My favorite part about that coin flip was the Chiefs crowd reaction after they won the coin flip.
Yes.
I love the haunting photos, or 10 haunting photos taken before disaster, and it's like the Chiefs tweet, "We've won the coin toss." I think my favorite actually was the Josh Allen pain.
Yeah.
When that was funny. And I think we'll wrap it up on that. Definitely a very exciting championship Sunday that definitely lived up to the craziness of the previous weekend. We have the most exciting game of the week next week with the Pro Bowl. Definitely make sure y'all tune into that. Going to be a tons of fun, tons of players.
NFC taking the dub. That's all I want to say. NFC
really,
going,
because I don't think the NFC's won in the last 6 years. But that's we can table that for another time. Then of course we got the Super Bowl the next week. It's going to be a really fun.
Can we get early predictions? Just straight up
for the Super Bowl?
Yeah, just super early predictions. Obviously we're not.
You're not hearing mine till our podcast on that.
I love the Rams. It's their year. I mean, if they don't do it this year, I mean, they're toast. So I mean, they got to get it done. So the Rams are winning the Super Bowl.
All right, you heard it from Stathi. All right, we hope you enjoyed this episode 9 of Stop the Clock. Hit us up. Let us know if you have any questions you want us to answer on the podcast. That Football Topic, Sports Box. As always, I'm your host, Sam Fermanak, alongside me, Jude and I. Thank you, Stathi, for joining us on this episode.
Wonderful.
Fun, as always. And have a good night.